your next door neighbor is not necessarily the person that you are going to make a connection with. In fact, the person you make a connection with might be on the other side of the world.
You can be sitting at your house in your pajamas, and you can actually impact the lives of someone sitting in a country hundreds of thousands of miles away.
Boyfriend rotes Herz, FaceTime Video.
Hi Baby!
Hi.
Na, schön dich zu sehen. Wie geht's dir?
Voll gut, Mann, und dir. Also, ist in Ordnung. Aber voll schön, dass du kurz Zeit gefunden hast. Dass wir kurz 5 Minuten reden können.
Ich nehm mir immer Zeit für dich.
Ja, haben wir jetzt aber schon eine Woche nicht geschafft. Deshalb freut es mich gerade voll.
The web is about, it's connecting humanity, all right? The web is humanity connected. Friends is one of them. I think the social networking systems we have at the moment are, in a way, in their infancy. Typically, they allow you to deal with the concept of a friend and a photograph and whether a friend is in a photo and where I'm going. But in fact, my life is much more complex than just having a set of friends. I have all kinds of groups. I want to share different things with different people. I want to go through different sorts of social protocols that you might do on the web, like figuring out where to meet, I will do with business colleagues, and figuring out whether what sort of a film would be good for me to watch, I will do with my friends, perhaps. There are all kinds of different things that I do in different cases. I think that we'll end up with much more complicated things. I don't know whether we'll still call them social networking, but our interactions, as we interact through the web, I think will include more and more things I've called social machines, things where, just like booking a meeting room, or organizing a trip, or building a photograph album, or for that matter, reviewing a scientific paper and deciding which one should be published. Things where people are doing the work, but the machinery of the web is allowing them to work, is actually doing the administration of linking them together into a bigger machine.
I think one of the things that has happened to the first generation of kids to grow up always being online, what I've seen is they have a global awareness that was not present in my generation. They really feel as if this is one world. They also feel as if they are always connected to everyone else. There is a feeling of being connected that I did not have in my generation. And I think the third thing is that there is a sense of movement forward, the sense of going somewhere, of maybe you might call it progress, that I think was not present in previous generations.
The users create their own system of connections. And these connections are not just a way of saying this is like that. It's actually a map that takes you to where you want to go. You just click and you go to the place. And this bottom-up creation of a linked world that is abundant beyond imagining, we've never had anything like that before.
I think one of the things that the web is doing, the kind of glue that it's brought to us that we haven't had before, is the glue of obsession, the glue of fascination, the glue of passion about something in particular. And so I think people who maybe before were lost or felt alone in their own little interests now are able to really connect with people who share what they share, this fascination with something in particular. And that particularness has been amplified and magnified. And that is the glue that I think brings a lot of people together that was not present before.
The fact that we connect so easily with one another is a different type of instrument for thinking. We've had many types of instruments for thinking, everything from scratching in the sand to books to computers. All of these things are tools for us to think and to do it out in the world. The internet is a new one of these, and it has particular strengths as well as some weaknesses. And the strength is that it lets us do this thing that we've always done to one degree or another, but now do it on a much larger scale, which is to think together, which is what conversation is usually about. Well, now we can do it with a much broader range of people across a much more diverse territory and a much larger geography.
The social web can do more good in the world than it can do bad. And it's the choice of people and the people who are using it as to what they want to do with it. It is the most empowering generational shift that has ever happened.
People trying to find new, interesting ways to communicate, become more efficient, become more engaged, become more informed. And I think it leads ultimately to having more empathy, to understanding more about what other people are, what's happening with other people, and sort of putting yourself in their shoes more often because you're engaging with them.
No one is alone anymore. And I actually think that's a really powerful thing. You can sit at your house and make change. And we're talking about social change and political change and economic change in a way that was never possible before. And I think that that's something that we should embrace and that we should look at what are the ways that we're going to make it the best of what people can be as opposed to the worst of what people can be.
It is clear that as the world becomes more connected, there will be the opportunity for nations to do bad things to each other. We haven't seen very much of it yet, but it's something that we have to think about for the future. Millions of people creating their own content and millions of people consuming this content, and for the most part they're communicating fairly directly with each other. Now, there are some virtual center points like Google and Facebook, but apart from that, the communications are basically many-to-many in an end-to-end network, and that makes it fundamentally difficult to censor.
Social technologies are reflective of human nature, whether it's connecting you to the people that you know or connecting you to people around the things that you care about. And when you look at it in that context, everything that people are doing in terms of learning how to connect with other people online is towards a common goal. So whether that common goal is sharing news articles for fun, or entertaining themselves by listening to amazing music in the context of a artist fan site or an artist website, or a MySpace page or a Facebook fan page, all of those skills can actually be used for anything.
Whether you meet up or not, you definitely get to know people over Twitter or electronic communication in general. With Twitter in particular, because it's very lightweight to share something and to read something, then it's about sharing details that you wouldn't necessarily share, but that give you insight to people, whether you know them or not. It's not just meeting new people, it's staying in touch in a very lightweight way that just isn't practical. It's not practical to pick up the phone and call all of your friends that are across the country every day. But you can hear from them on Twitter every day, and it provides a real connection that you otherwise wouldn't have.
It keeps you much closer so that it's not as awkward. If you haven't talked to a friend in a month, it doesn't matter. You can pick up the phone and you can immediately be like, so how, that run, it sounded like a good run you had the other day. You're immediately caught up on like the chit chat. You don't have to be like, so how's it, are you still married, or is that a weird subject?
Yeah, I think you end up talking, you end up having more interesting conversations, because normally if you don't talk to someone very much, you only talk about the really big stuff. I think it's more about maintaining relationships than new relationships. I don't actually, this my personal experience, I don't meet a lot of people and become real world friends with them through the internet that much, even though most of my friends are met through the internet somehow. But it's, the real world contact is important, and school and work and social life and hobbies are still going to be the main way people meet each other. But it can turn a chance meeting into a relationship. Because now when I meet someone at a conference or wherever, and if I get their Twitter username, then I have like a string back to them that otherwise there was no connection at all. Even if I have their email address, that I have to prompt them. That's a big, much bigger step than following them on Twitter. It's even a bigger step to engage with someone on a social network, where you have to say, Now that I've met you once, we're friends. We're not really friends, but I might want to keep up with you. And you don't even have to reciprocate, but that could eventually lead to a relationship that otherwise would not exist.
Now you speak and expect a response. Now, you don't use your spoken word yet, although you can with an iPhone app, but generally you speak through typing the words, but it's natural language. That's a big shift in interface, and we expect the world, when we speak, to completely reorganize around what we say in 0.2 seconds. It provided a platform and inverted the model of marketing and forced marketers, not immediately, but over a number of years, to recognize the power of the internet and to have to shift the way they thought about how they had conversations with customers. Because the model was, you didn't pay until someone clicked. Completely opposite than the model of almost all the rest of dollars in marketing, which were you paid and hoped someone called. You paid for impressions, not for actions. And when people did click, you wouldn't be successful unless you had something on the other end of that that delivered value. So now you not only had to understand someone's intent, you then had to offer a service that would deliver on that intent. Which meant that marketers had to start seeing the internet as something that was essential to their business as opposed to another marketing channel. So it really shifted, it augured a very important shift of all of business to using the internet as a platform for business as opposed to, oh, it's that thing over there where we buy some ads and put some banners up. And we're only beginning to see that shift truly take fruition. I think it was a pivot point in the history of how the internet economy works. And we've seen huge wins where companies get very good at understanding how to have a conversation online. Amazon, very good at that, right? And what do? Well, they pretty much displaced, 10 to 15% of the retail business in the United States, right? That's pretty good, right? So it's it's understanding how to have that conversation with customers at scale and leveraging a technology platform to do it, and leveraging the fact that as a culture we've shifted how we ask for things and what we expect in return when we ask. The speed with which, the fluidity, the expectation that whoever we ask will know enough to give us a smart answer.
When I came up with the term, it was 1987, and the emphasis was really on community rather than the virtual part, because people were asking me whether anyone besides some kind of maybe anti-social electrical engineer would be interested in using computers to communicate with people. And I was very excited because what I had discovered in bulletin board systems and ultimately the well were real people who became part of my life. In fact, babysat for my daughter. I was at their weddings. I went to their funerals. I sat by their deathbeds. Anything that you do in a real community was happening with this group of people. And I wanted to get the word out that even though we met through computers, we're real people and our relationships are real.
One of the reasons people are drawn to virtual communities like Second Life is people are hungry for community. They're hungry for meaning in a society that is oriented around the production and consumption of consumer goods. Buy more stuff. I mean, it doesn't make people happy. I know this sounds like a gross oversimplification, and in some ways it is. But when there's an alternative to be able to reach out and to find kindred spirits who have common interests or share a common perspective on life and to feel fulfilled by that, people will do that even if it is a somewhat low resolution version of reality. And I would call a virtual world like a very low res version of real reality. People are hungry for meaning, hungry for contact.
The web is about it's connecting humanity. All right, the web is humanity connected.
And this bottom-up creation of a linked world that is abundant beyond imagining, we've never had anything like that before.
It is the most empowering generational shift that has ever happened.
I think it leads ultimately to having more empathy, to understanding more about what other people are, what's happening with other people, and sort of putting yourself in their shoes more often because you're engaging with them.
There is a feeling of being connected that I did not have in my generation.